All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Erik Benson, and I'm the Education Chair for the CFA Society South Florida. Welcome to Onward and Upward, the South Florida job market for CFA charter holders. We have a wonderful panel tonight to go through just about everything we can for our location in our area for charter holders. And I think it's a little specialized, but I think it should be welcomed by charter holders especially. A few housekeeping notes. With the CFA Society South Florida, we have a few events upcoming. We have a spring social in April. Look for the posts on our website soon. The exact dates and locations will be set. And also we have a women's social at Ann Norton's on April 19th. This is a limited attendance, so make sure you sign up early if you are going to attend. It's going to be a great event. And I'd like to take a quick minute to introduce our panel. I'll start off with Katie Jones with JM Family. And we have Jennifer Abrams with Polen Capital, Masterson-Kellenberger with Seacoast National Bank, and Jan von Herburt-Hewell, did I get it?
Yeah.
With Truist. All right. Katie, if you'd like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Erik. Appreciate it. So those of you who know me, my name is Katie Jones. I am a senior talent acquisition advisor at JM Family. I've been with JM Family for about 4 years, started as a contractor and kind of worked my way up from there. I support our investments teams, corporate development, strategy, IT, anything pretty specialized and difficult, pretty much it's in my floor. So love what I do, love supporting and building relationships here in South Florida.
All right, so I'm Jennifer Abrams. You can also call me Jen. It goes both ways. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the talent acquisition manager for Polen Capital. I also am fortunate to love my job and be busy recruiting these days in this competitive market. Previously, I was in New York City. That's where I started my recruiting career, and we came back to Florida. I am actually from here. So we came back to Florida with COVID. I found Polen Capital, and it's been a really happy fit since then.
My name is Masterson-Kellenberger, and I am the president of CFA Society of South Florida. And I just want to take a moment to thank Erik for putting this together tonight. Appreciate that. I work with Seacoast National Bank as a regional portfolio manager and senior vice president.
My name is Jan von Herburt-Hewell. I'd also like to thank Erik and everyone else in the CFA Society for putting this together. I'm an investment manager at Truist Bank. I've been with them for a little over 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was with the private bank of Wells Fargo. I'm from Virginia originally, and in Florida for about the same time I've been with the bank.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. And to get started, the main thing I wanted to touch base on is this job market for CFA charter holders. And what a better way to do it than with Katie and Jen to really dig in and tell us what the themes are in today's market. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has changed a lot of things. Unemployment is low, but there are a lot of other variables going on in the market. Could maybe, Katie, you can start and go over a few of them for us.
Sure. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, right? So our job market is kind of like our housing market, right? Supply and demand, general agree, it's pretty low here in South Florida. So kind of give you guys some insight. So I pull a lot of my data from Gartner every single day. They're rating investments positions and financial like a 9 out of 10 here in South Florida. It's pretty wild. So extremely difficult, on their scale, to say the least. So what I can tell you is previous for me coming to JM Family, a lot of talent was local to JM Family. Now I'm pulling candidates in from New York. I brought in 2 from New York last month. The month before that, 2 from Orlando, all CFA charter holders. And typically we want to stay in South Florida. We want folks to be down here already and pull from our local talent rather than come from outside the area, but it's so scarce. I think that people want to come down here, even though how hard a real estate market is, but you're kind of capitalizing on that for sure. And I'm not sure, Jen, if you're kind of experiencing the same thing or what that looks like to you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think every headline and the Wall Street Journal and, every other LinkedIn is about the market. We've been experiencing the same kind of issues. It's a competitive market. Companies are actively hiring in this area, CFA, but also, as I'm sure you've heard, the technology and analytics space is a hot space and it's competitive. So we've really been focusing on finding the talent. When we identify, the person, the individual, we try to move forward in the process as quickly as possible. Not lingering. Oh, sorry, I'm in trouble. I didn't have my mic. Okay, not lingering and, moving forward. Better? Okay. So I'll give it back to you, but those are just the key themes that we're seeing all the time.
Yeah, so speed to market is probably one thing that we're seeing for sure. So I'm not. Go ahead, Erik.
I mentioned earlier in our previous discussions that we have over 400 society members, charter holders in the CFA Society South Florida. I mean, is it that hard to find talent in South Florida, given that many numbers? I mean, is it really having to pull teeth to get people to move in South Florida? How's that working with given the number of charter holders?
Well, I would just say to that, the mic works. I would just say to that, people are here, but they're very happy in their jobs. So, we both work for fantastic companies, but we're happy that you're all happily, gainfully employed. So, part of it has to be a pitch and a sell, ready to move, to pivot, to take on something new. And they're not the CFA market. And then, plus, people want CFA, as we talked about when we discussed, they want CFA, they want other experiences as well. So how you differentiate yourself, how you package yourself is helpful.
Great. And go ahead, Katie.
And just to touch on that story, Erik, is really at the end of the day, it's not we're competing for South Florida, we're competing against the entire nation for not South Florida companies, but remote companies. So the biggest banks, institutions in the nation, right? We're competing for the same CFA charter holders in South Florida. So something to keep in mind, the 500 could be dispersed across the United States or even the world.
Interesting. Yeah. So I looked on LinkedIn. I did a search part of this event to see how many job openings were available for charter holders in our area within 25 miles of Boca Raton. And I wanted to see what was out there. There were 31 positions for on-site work. Off-site, there were 189. So that's interesting. You're saying, I think that's the first time we're starting to see that give and take. But now it seems like the rest of the country can come in and hire you to work remote. Not too many people are complaining about that, but that's a whole nother variable in finding talent, is it not? So how do you compete against that? I mean, you can work at home or you can come in the office. I mean, do you find people going both ways?
It depends on the person and what they're looking for at the end of the day. Is it looking for culture? Are they looking for growth, opportunity? Are they looking to stay stagnant in their career and just kind of take in the money and sit at home in front of their computer and unplug at 5? Or what are they looking for ideally? And we're kind of playing off of what makes people tick and what is truly matters to them at the end of the day. But it's a ball game out there for sure.
And I'll just build on that. So Polen Capital does something unique. We have a ROWE work environment, ROWE, that stands for results only work environment. We've had that in existence pre-COVID, so maybe it's less nuanced or less new now, but what it means, it's not a work from home philosophy. It's not technically a hybrid philosophy, although that is what it most closely aligns to. What it is it is a framework and philosophy that allows employees to be in the driver's seat of their career. You're not mandated to be in the office 5 days a week. You're not, technically allowed to be home 5 days a week. You work when you want to work. You're in the driver's seat of your career, and it allows you to come into the office to connect, but also leave if you have a dentist appointment or something like that. It's just increased flexibility, and our employees really value that because it's the flexibility they're looking for.
That's great. And how has your targeting changed to finding charter holders? I mean, is it still going through LinkedIn's and other networks? Is it going through headhunters? How are you going about sourcing it? You want to start, Katie?
Yeah, so I am a hunter. So I'm on LinkedIn 24/7, 7 days a week. But it's nice to have partnerships like this too, where you can post in these one-off job boards and post on CFA national website, also South Florida website too. But really, at the end of the day, I'm hunting all day long. The applicant flow is minimal. So really, I would say LinkedIn's probably my #1 tool and always maybe will be. But if there are other avenues, I'm willing to go out there and target those.
The applicant flow is minimal. Wow. Are you seeing the same thing?
Absolutely. What I used to get 2 years ago, immediately, it's a trickle now.
Wow. Incredible. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to take it from these two wonderful ladies that gave us an insight of finding CFA charter holders to two CFA charter holders that have recently come upon positions, most likely because of their CFA charter, and what they thought of in the market and looking for position, and also what how the charter helped them. And Melissa, if you don't mind starting with us.
Sure. Yeah, I think in the case with Seacoast Bank, for my position, having the CFA charter was something that they put that they said that they wanted, not just preferred, but it was really something that they were looking for in the role. And so I think that's helpful, like the CFA charter we have members that work in many different areas of investments and finance and compliance and consulting and all sorts of things. And so I think just kind of knowing what your preferences are, what direction you'd like to take. In my case, it's like I noticed the position and some of the things that they said, they were looking for, I felt like could potentially be a good fit for me. And so, that's what started the conversation. But I think it's also good to talk to people in your area. And I certainly agree with what everybody was saying in terms of, I think just the remote work has really changed things. So it's, there's a lot, in a way, it's like there's just a lot more opportunity out there that you don't necessarily have to move for. So you really have to think about what you're looking for and try to find, a company that is a good fit for that.
Great, thank you. And Jan, I want you to touch on, but before this, I think once you speak, the CFA Institute is going to make you the poster child of getting your charter. You mentioned that you started you became a candidate for level 1, and that opened a lot of doors for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'm a huge advocate of the CFA, and it's been a tremendous differentiator for my career. But let me start off by saying that I had an unusual kind of career path into private wealth management. So right after undergrad, I was a math major. I joined the military, served 8 years, very happy with that decision. Then I went back to grad school and then kind of fell in love with finance there. So as I got hired in private wealth management, first let me say the CFA it's not necessary to do that job, right? At certain segment levels of wealth where I operate now, it is a requirement, but just to get into private wealth management, you don't need a CFA. But because I had this deficit of experience, right? My peer group had been in finance for the last 8 years. I'd been in the military, so my resume just didn't pair up with them. What really helped was, saying I'm pursuing level 1. And with each level that I passed, it was just instant street cred amongst my colleagues, supervisors. And as I started going from one firm to another, they're just like, okay, here's someone who's committed to the career of finance, who has, a high level of competency, is learned, et cetera. So, and I saw that recognition, and especially as soon as you pass level 2, just the way somebody looks at you, who's either in the program, who has friends in the program, whatever. As soon as you pass level 2, it was a big difference. So within Wells Fargo, when I was at the private bank there, it helped my ascension very quickly, right? From an investment associate doing predominantly administrative work to ramping up very quickly because I passed level 2 consecutively to, okay, you know what you're doing, here's money, start managing it, right? And even when I got the opportunity here at Truist, what got me the job really was, without the CFA, there would be no chance, because they moved me from Nevada all the way to Florida. And there's a lot of, competition. This is a few years ago. This was during the pandemic, it was a big risk for the company. But, they were very excited to see I was on level 3 and then gave me the opportunity. And, my office had some turnover. So at the time when I was working with them, I was actually helping a senior portfolio manager who left the firm. I had just gotten my designation, and without hesitation, they're like, well, okay, practice what you've been taught and go ahead. So I will gladly take the title of poster boy, because I think for me, like I said, just the way it helped me make up an experience deficit and just be considered, okay, capable within this career path. Very grateful. So huge advocate.
Great to hear. That's awesome. And Melissa and Jan, given what they just mentioned, how the limited amount of applicants and they're going hunting, how did you see that in throughout your process? Were you finding yourself applying more? Was it more through networking, or did you find people coming to get you? Jan, you can speak to it too, as well. Obviously, as you're getting your charter, how did that open doors that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you pass that test, everyone's dying to change their LinkedIn, profile. It's like can't wait. I mean, you've
Yeah.
seen a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get the designation, if you will. And the reward happens when you put comma CFA after your name on LinkedIn. I mean, I have no desire to leave my firm, but trust me, they will come find you now. You hit some sort of database or some search query that's out there, and all of a sudden, all these firms, within certain industries just start pinging you. So, like I saw that almost instantly as soon as I, updated with the little seal and put the comma on those 3 letters after my name, people find you, right? So it makes the job search much easier. And it allows you to go into a interview with a certain level of confidence because it's a rare commodity, right? Like there's only so many CFAs in the world, let alone in any one market. And it's a difficult designation to get. So you can go in there and then realize that odds are the other people that are competing for the same position just don't have one. So that's been my experience.
It sounds like there's a premium on charter holders right now. Is that kind of the gist I'm getting here? And Melissa too, can you speak to that? How has that changed recently, versus a few years ago?
I think a few years ago, I was in the Charlotte market, and that market is a bit different from here. The types of roles are different. It's very recruiter heavy there. And so I think in Charlotte, they're just always contacting you, the different firms, about different opportunities. And I think there it's extremely experience driven was what I found. And then one thing could easily lead to another too. So I think here, when I moved back here the summer of 2019, right before the pandemic, it's, at that time, I mean, we do have a lot of companies coming down here now, like different types of financial companies, hedge funds, but there was a lot of private wealth here, of course, as compared to, Charlotte. At the time I was there, was the second largest banking city in the US. And so I think the roles were a little bit different. And, to your point about what you were saying, to go into every area of private wealth or financial advisor type of work, you don't necessarily need to have a CFA charter. But when you get into like high net worth, ultra high net worth, I mean, definitely, I think, for those situations, and also institutional like foundations, endowments, if you do that type of management as well, then that ends up being what people are looking for. And so I noticed looking down here, there were a lot of companies that would also mention the CFP designation. And I thought it might be good, if you had CFA and a CFP designation, although if you have the experience working in it and the charter, I think that would be sufficient as well. But to your point, I do think a lot of people reach out to you on LinkedIn. That's been something. I'm trying to think if there was a time period I haven't got, I haven't got a lot of contact. I think I've gotten it for, the CFA charter, but also at one point, it seemed like everybody was looking to hire women in investment management. And so I would get a lot of people reaching out to me just sort of like on that point and my experience and everything like that. So
basically, if you're up north and it's freezing in the middle of winter and you want to get out of there and you want somebody to give you a job in South Florida, go get your CFA charter. Sounds like a winner right now.
Can I add one
Sure.
thing? I was just going to echo a couple of points. What Jean said about instant street cred, for me as a recruiter, seeing the CFA designation is just one less barrier to entry. That just tells me that you've put in the effort, you've learned a certain skill set, you've worked really hard. And it, as a recruiter, it gives me a peace of mind, right? Like I know the candidates I'm advancing have this skill set. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that Melissa said about, we're talking about the CFA and people always think investment research, which is absolutely an option, private wealth management, but our CEO has the CFA, one of my salespeople, Leo, who's here, has the CFA. There's many different avenues that the CFA can help you. Of course, if your passion's research, then you should pursue that. But the CFA can help you in such a multitude of ways, and it's such a powerful designation that I respect it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And digging into that a little bit more, I mean, and that checks a great box. What about the other designations? How does it stack up? I guess it's more specific to the role you're looking for.
In terms of MBA or
Yeah,
chartered
exactly.
accountant? Yeah, that would depend more on the role specific and the requirements I'm looking for. So the answer is it depends, which, isn't so satisfactory.
Yeah.
But the CFA it's just a level setter, right? And we were talking about this, and we can talk about this later, but, as college students have the opportunity to identify this as an area of interest and start earlier, which I am impressed with. I'm not judging people who don't realize it as early, but it's certainly a level of, someone who's in college, who's a senior and also studying for the CFA, or a junior as the new rules are. That's certainly, someone who I would give pause to, because they've been thoughtful and intentional with how they're spending their time. And, time management is half of working these days, right?
Exactly. Especially if you can do a level 1 while in your undergrad. I mean, that checks a big box.
Right.
So if there's a limited number of applicants, but I'm sure at the end of the day, it comes down to several candidates for a position. What are some things CFA charter holders can do these days to really set themselves apart? I know you're trying to recruit people, and I'm sure you're putting people up against each other to find who's the best option. I mean, is there anything out there these days that looks different, that really checks another box and takes them to the next level? Katie, if you want to start.
So at JM Family specifically, we're a company that's been around for 50 years. It's a lot of culture. There's a lot of culture. And that's like, if on top of designation, we have to screen for culture behind it. So the candidates that fit the mold and as well are probably gonna be pushing forward in the process more than someone who may not came off of a certain direction. And I mean by culture, it's a culture of meeting our core values of consideration, cooperation, innovation, accountability. Those are things we look for in a culture. But also a big focus was DE&I. And I know Melissa touched on that just a little bit, in terms of being a woman as well too. And our CIO, she came a year and a half ago, and she was our first woman chief investment officer that we ever had at JM Family. And so she came in full force, and that was not something, I'm not sure if that was something that was planned, but DE&I is a big factor, as well too. But at the end of the day, the best candidate wins. And the CFA usually wins along with that culture piece. So just kind of touch on that just a little bit.
And Jen, you mentioned to me previously about the ESG certifications and other things that, charter holders can add on and learn and specialize in. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah,
Some that, way more than others, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, some aspects.
All the different options that they have, what stand out to you?
Right. Well, like D&E and I, the ESG is certainly a hot topic. It's very important to the younger generation, and people are just kind of waking up to it and becoming more passionate. So that's a new offering that CFA has. Some of our employees have pursued it, and we celebrate their success. So I think that's definitely a win. And then kind of at the more entry level, there's the CFA Foundations course, which some people in, I think, seniors in high school or, young students can definitely pursue. And again, I view that with respect, because I know the stringency and requirements that the CFA Institute puts in place. And, I respect that people are choosing to learn this, spend their time, and advance themselves in that way. Great.
Melissa and Jan, Jan, you mentioned getting the charter really open the doors. Melissa, you and I have talked about this before. Some things, if say you haven't been in the job market in a while and you just got your CFA charter, now you're starting to explore and see what the other options are. You got a question?
Yes. Is it entirely possible to have a relatively, I guess, halfway decent to good career just passing in finance or as an analyst, just simply passing one level of the CFA? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, if you're on the right track and have the aspirations, I think absolutely.
I just want to stop there.
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
I think
So we would want you to finish it out.
you might want to double check on if you can say you passed level 1, but if you're not actively signed up, I don't believe you can say that you're a candidate. So you might want to look into that for exact answer on how you can actually state that you passed level 1. Go ahead.
Follow up, because I did read just now that it really depends on like the other levels of the CFA. It really depends on where you work. I mean, some private equity firms are going to stress a very high emphasis. They're going to push you to really want to complete all 3 levels, while other firms are it's not going to.
I would take this, I mean, and this is based on my experience. I don't feel like, in my case, if I had just done level 1 and that was it, in my case, it would have been as helpful. And I think for similar reasons to what you were saying, my original educational background is in special education. And so then later on, I came into the finance field, and I had already been working in the field when I went ahead and decided to pursue my CFA charter. And I do feel like there was a lot more opportunity available to me, particularly in the realm of money management, than would have otherwise been available to me had I not went ahead and completed it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you've done something like past level 1, that might get you your foot in the door. You probably will get hired, just depending what position you're applying for, the talent pool, et cetera. I think in certain industries, you might plateau, depending on what you're doing in terms of your career progression. I can only speak, I know for, like I said, I work with ultra high net worth individuals, and they really want you to have a CFA before they put you in front of those types of clientele. So if you just kind of stopped after level 1, then I would taper expectations of actually getting into that seat, right? So, but in terms of, can you take level 1 to help you get a job? Sure, I think it's beneficial. I would just then, if you just stop there, depending on the job, they might stop you there too. It just depends on the company, et cetera. So,
On a personal note, if you put yourself through level 1 and the time it takes to pass level 1, you might as well go to level 2, because that's a lot of work to just go and stop. I'm sure a lot of the charter holders that are here can attest to that. Taking level 1, that's a big step. I'd highly recommend to keep pushing and not just rest on that. That's for sure. So let's segue into something different. Given we are at FAU in this beautiful room, the facilities are fantastic here. My first time here, this is great. The way that the CFA Institute has changed the testing setup, undergrad students can now take level 1 and 2 before they graduate. So you're telling me you can finish your undergrad education and be work experience in 1 exam away from basically attaining your CFA charter. I mean, you could be 23 years old at that point. I wish I had my charter back then. You mentioned it earlier, how does that set the bar now when looking at candidates? I mean, do you take somebody that doesn't have the experience, fresh out of college, but they have 2 levels under their belt, most likely? That's a big step. Where does that fit in? And, especially in a market that's scarce, as we've heard on charter holders. Jen, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a perfect layup. I think that's hugely beneficial to candidates. Again, I'm not going to judge people who, career switch or realize later, but to the extent that I'm comparing 2 candidates and one has pursued his or her CFA and is in process, again, I think it shows, an interest, a dedication, time management, and with success, they're that much closer to reaching their goals. So I think it's hugely beneficial. I think there needs to be an education component also. So like all students have access and know about the CFA, because I think that's a great, just another way to get the word out there, but it's hugely additive to their resume coming out of school. I mean, immensely.
And Katie, as far as students coming out, what kind of interaction have you had, and would that other roles and positions and ideas that JM would have to entertain on that front?
Yeah, so for like junior analytical positions, like ops or even portfolio side of the house, we live for that. We're looking at the long term because we have so many baby boomers who are retiring and looking at the great exit or resignation, I think everyone's calling it these days. I think it's sooner the better. Hop right in, get going. You have the aspirations, you have the aptitude. We're hiring for the future, not hiring for right now. So I think you got to take a gamble with these kids who have, or even students or young adults, coming in here. 23 years old and trying to move in their career. Someone's got to take a shot on them. And if they have the aspirations, why not? Absolutely.
I don't know if I had enough time in college to do that, but if you did, I mean, that's a big checkbox, right?
Yeah.
Melissa, we discussed before we were talking earlier about things that you use to kind of engage and get yourself going in the right direction, the direction you wanted to go for your next career, your next position. And you mentioned, I believe it was career coaching and some of the other points, if you can touch on that.
Yeah, of course. I think that in my experience, you know, it's helpful, I think, to when you think through, to help you think through what direction you want to go in, what your focus area will be. And of course, I don't just mean when you're starting out, because we evolve over the course of our lives, right? We develop different interests and different in pursuing different areas. And so I think career coaching can be hugely helpful. One of my first experiences with that was actually going, CFA Institute would have a diversity and inclusion conference every year. And one year I went to that, and they had as sort of a complimentary feature, you had sort of some time with a career coach where they went over things with you. They looked at your resume. And this was out in California, the one I went to. And I found the session like incredibly insightful and kind of gave me some things to think about and how I wanted to organize things. Another thing I think is we all, you know, we can think through every year, you know, when we go through, or even every quarter, what have I done this quarter? What are my goals? Where am I at? You know, we kind of do these things as we go through the course of the year. But, you know, you have sort of the things that you're really good at, but none of us are professional resume writers. And actually, you know, if we're honest with ourselves, you know, we are probably, most of us, not that great at doing that. But that can many times be how somebody comes across you, and they're going through so many of these things. And so you want it to be like organized, focused, succinct. I think definitely it's important to get help with those things. Another point that I wanted to mention was networking. One time, I remember years ago, there was a managing director with Deutsche Bank, and she was like, I don't know, featured in like one of the most powerful women in the hedge fund industry at the time. And she was extremely intentional about networking. Like, she had a certain way that she went about doing this. Like, she had certain time frames and people she spoke to. And I'm not that specific. I mean, maybe I should be, maybe, but I think it is important to kind of keep up with people that you know in your network, people that you like. I mean, we all have people, and people that also, you know, they're willing to share with you and talk to you over time. And so I do, and to grow in that network over time, I think that that's really helpful in terms of, you know, like when you do find yourself looking for an opportunity.
We're looking for career panelists. I met Jan at our one of our dinners we had for the society, and at the holiday party. And I said, what a great person to come speak to on events. How did networking assist you? You know, you mentioned that you came out of the military and you had to you started working on your charter. How did all that work out?
Well, yeah, because this world was so foreign to me, right? You don't know what you don't know. So I didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted to do with my life out of the military and after school. So, you know, networking, talking to individuals is how I, you know, really got introduced into the world that I'm in right now, private wealth management. And I think it was a huge advantage. Just the more people you talk to, you get a better understanding of their career, how they got there, and what are the best kind of like, you know, steps and success to get to those kind of positions. So I always advocate networking, and go to any function that you can. There's always a possibility to gain something. You don't lose anything, right? What's the worst that can happen, right? So I'm a huge advocate. It helped me. I didn't know what to do until I started talking to individuals. I knew I liked finance, but that's a very broad topic. It's like being a doctor and say, oh, I want to study medicine. Fantastic. There's like so many different things you can do within the field of medicine. Do you want to be an oncologist? Do you want to pulmonologist? Like, you got to get more into specifics. You got to start talking to these people to figure out whether or not it's right for you. It's the same thing with finance. It's a very, very broad topic. And then you got to figure out, okay, what within finance do I want to do? And this is a great designation, but no one who's taken it's going to lie to you. It's a big time commitment. So before you agree to and kind of embark on this journey, if you will, make sure that it's right for you and it's right for the job path that you really want. And, you know, what you were saying as well, like, I think the CFA does give you a big advantage on, you know, looking for a new career or whatever, but it doesn't replace basic job application skills. You have to have a well-written resume. You have to research the company you're going to work for. You have to be personal. You have to have a good story, explain the value add that you add to them. It's just a great way to get your foot in the door, but you still have to do your, you know, like normal due diligence of job hunting. I wouldn't say that oh, because you have a CFA, they have to hire you. No, if you don't fit the company culturally, then congratulations, you can take your CFA somewhere else. But so it's a great tool to have everyone pay attention to you, I would say, while you're looking for a job, but you still have to be, do the legwork and the other aspects itself, right? It's a great ticket, may not be the golden ticket, right? You still have to do your own work.
Can I add
Jen?
something? I'm a piggybacker, but what Melissa was saying about networking, I was thinking about the conversation we had about, I said, well, like we use LinkedIn a lot, and you said, oh, LinkedIn, everyone knows LinkedIn. But of course, you all do, and I expect that. But I think LinkedIn, not only just applying for jobs, but LinkedIn and the CFA Society for the purpose of networking and creating those relationships that, year one is just, I met Melissa, now we're going to keep in touch. Year two is I found an article that I thought she would like, and I'm going to send it to her. I'm very big on articles. I love reading, recruiting, and I send people articles and then they reply and then we have a conversation. Year three, Melissa knows she has a new recruiting job and she's going to reach out to me. So it took 3 years or longer, but that opportunistic relationship where I met Melissa tonight, really, we connect through LinkedIn or something else, and then it builds from there. I listened to a podcast, I heard Melissa quoted, it was amazing, and things like that. That lays the foundation for a friendship or a relationship. And the CFA in that respect is a segue, right? It's a common grounds we all share, and then you can build on that. And I've seen that work, and just related to that, we have opportunities, but sometimes, a portfolio manager or a sales manager is thinking about something, but they haven't posted it yet. It's kind of like a seed in the back of their mind. They're thinking about it. Maybe I want to hire someone with an ESG background, but it's not fully fleshed. I don't have approval. But if they have relationships already, so-and-so pops into their head, and if and when, that's how people get hired. We still may post the position and interview, but the portfolio manager is going to say, I know so-and-so, we should consider them for this role. I had them in mind when I created it. And that, is like a layup for the candidate. So it's just another way that we can all connect and facilitate hiring and relationships.
And it's the due diligence process.
Right.
You already know the person, they fit, that helps everybody, right?
Right.
I want to help you two a little bit. So we've back to the supply of charter holders down here in the available positions, and obviously competing elsewhere with remote work. How does somebody looking in this market, looking to get their name out, perhaps to reach out to you, how does somebody get in the door with someone like yourself to say, hey, I'm interested, you may not have a position? How do they start networking with you and try to get on the radar?
I'll let you take it. Yeah.
So differentiate yourself, right? How are you gonna get there? So to me, my emails are completely just filled, and Jennifer can attest to that. But the ones who separate themselves, we grab a cup of coffee, we can do virtual coffee, we can take time to review JM Family's website for 5 minutes before I'm answering. Because I have a CFA and you say, hey, Katie, I have a CFA now. What jobs do you have open for me? I want them to do research behind it and differentiate themselves. It's how are you? How's your day going, Katie? That even those little things go a very long way. I have folks who reach out to me and they have no clue who JM Family is. They have no clue what jobs I have open, what day of the week it is, just because of their credentials as well too. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I would build on that. If you were applying for a job with me and you said, hey, I had a conversation with Leo and he told me great things about Polen Capital and I'm so excited because of X, Y, and Z, that's instantly going to grab my attention and bring you to the top of the list, because I know you went out of your way to start a conversation, to be thoughtful, and hopefully do your diligence on our company. I agree. Candidates who have not, our website is great. Websites are accessible to everyone these days. Candidates who have not put at least 5 minutes to look through the website and connect with something and be able to cite something, it's disappointing in this day and age.
Yeah, if you're a charter holder, I think the amount of work you put into that, I'm sure there are not too many of them just lobbing their name. Maybe they do. I would hope they would and say, they can just put the CFA on the table and say that's a job. I don't know if that just happens, even in a hot market like this. Well, all that was fantastic. All 4 of you, it was amazing. And now I want to turn over to the crowd. We had a few questions earlier. Does anybody have anything for our panelists? Go for it.
Just a quick question. My name is Erik. I'm with PNC's Institutional Asset Management Group in Fort Lauderdale. Jan, your story in particular, it really jumped out at me. Former police officer from Austin, Texas,
Right.
networked my way into the role, was supposed to be in a friend's wedding. Couldn't make that wedding, but instead got a job at PNC, so it worked out. But just curious, how long, obviously, come something completely different. How long did it take as you sat for the CFA, preparing for level 1? Did it come to you right away, or did it take a little while for that to click in your mind to switch gears to something more analytical? I'm an econ major, pretty math heavy in college, but obviously, not a lot of investment analysis work nights in the last 2 years. So
Yeah.
curious for your thoughts.
Well, thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. No, it did not come easy to me. I was a knuckle dragger, infantry officer. Yeah, so it was 180 degrees from anything I'm used to. But you have what I have, which is discipline. And I think like a general fear of failure or distaste for failure. So if the average candidate, they say, studies 300 hours, I studied 6. I'm not gonna lie. I studied way above overkill. And I also took advantage of so I did Kaplan was the study aid that I used, and I'll do a shout out for Kaplan apparently. I paid for the premium package, right? Like every study material I could get, video lessons, in-person classes for a week, slightly before the exam. So what they do is like 7 days recap about 45 days before the exam. So you can kind of go through all the material. I found it very digestible in that manner. I thought they had great instructors, and if it wasn't for, Kaplan and just overkill with the studying, it was not easy. I was right there with you. It's just 2 very different worlds, going one from the other. So I recommend, anyone look, there's not much difference between studying 400 hours at the end of the day, 500 hours, right? Like your life is miserable. If you're studying 400 hours, you're studying 500 hours, just keep pushing until it's uncomfortable. Because what's really disappointing is studying 400 hours and then not passing. You'll have to repeat it. I was also very lucky, single, no family, no kids. So that, gave me a huge advantage that I didn't make anyone else's life miserable during my study process. But yeah, when it came to studying, I just hit, like a baseball bat to a fly, because otherwise I don't think I would have passed.
Yeah, great answer. That's going to be my strategy. That's my strategy to make things like so.
And take full, like I said, whether it's Kaplan or some other study aid, take full advantage of that stuff. Those people do a great job of condensing the source material, which I think is very challenging to study from. If you pick up a CFA book, there's a lot more smarter people than me. So maybe they can read a CFA Institute book. That was difficult. So having Kaplan condense it, much easier for me. And if you think about the ROI, let's say you spend $2,000 on a package from Kaplan and you register for the exam, you're out $2,500, but you didn't waste any of your time. And if you do that 3 times, you're out 10 grand, you'll make it all back. I promise. In the opportunities and the salaries that you'll get once you're a CFA, it's the best 10 grand, ROI I think you can do, if I'm being honest.
Well, I want to give a plug for FAU and their test prep. They have a level 1 exam course that I'm a product of that was top notch. And I want to give a lot of credit to them. So if you're looking to take level 1, I highly recommend the FAU level 1 course. It's online and in person. We have one of our esteemed instructors here this evening. And I would not pass that up if you had an opportunity. I give a lot of credit to passing level 1 due to that course specifically. So it's a pretty cool setup. Any other questions?
I'll definitely agree with you on the FAU CFA charter holder class in person. My question is, how has the job market changed for CFA charter holders with the those opportunities for companies to work or here and then
Yeah, you can take it.
So I've gotten really lucky this year that I had 2 from New York that came down in the middle of the pandemic, because New York City was a tough place to be at during the pandemic. And I have 2 from Orlando that came down as well to South Florida. So I got really lucky, but I can tell you now, and even in the last 2 months, the tides have turned. and is extremely competitive. So I'm competing, like I mentioned before, nationally across the entire nation to find these folks. And it's just like our housing market. And I'll preach it all day long, and it is. And they're trying to find our houses too. They're trying to move down here. But I don't, Jen, you feel the same way about what's up against in terms of the market.
Yeah, I would agree. But yeah, it's just a competitive market. Someone used the expression frothy. It's nonstop, and that's great for you all, and makes our work a little bit harder. But we're excited to get the talent. And again, just echoing everything that's been said. The CFA is a really well-respected, valued degree. It's not the only component of the package, but it's certainly a significant one, and it represents, a dedication of hours and pursuit of knowledge. So we value it, and we're still doing our best. It's not always a requirement, but it's certainly looked on heavily favored and positive.
And to piggyback a little bit more, so you mentioned the cost, right? The ROI on it, and you can ask for that in your sign-on bonus to come on in. But all companies are competitive to sign-on bonuses and where you're going to find the talent. It's really, you guys, we're living in your market, to be honest, day to day. So you can kind of pick and choose if you want us to pay for your phone, your car, your house, your dog, just about anything. Companies are willing to kind of go over and beyond to do it. But also you get to pick and choose what's your long-term vision look like as well too, because those are all some things be short-term versus long-term. So things to keep in mind.
Melissa and Jan, in this area, Melissa, maybe you can speak to this. When you're looking around in the last few years, where did you see most of the demand and openings and whatnot for charter holders? Was it mainly on the wealth management side, or were the hedge funds involved? Were there, money managers such as Polen? I mean, how did that landscape look?
Yeah, so I think when I first came down, most of what I was seeing was on the private wealth side, but I think that is changing, and I think it has changed rather quickly. And so I do think there's a lot more opportunities now than even a couple years back, and they're more diverse opportunities. And I think with the with remote work and all of that, I think, it just creates a lot more choices, depending what area you want to work. I mean, some people, just thinking about it, you have two people in a household working, right? And sometimes one person does not have the flexibility to move out of an area, but they really care about their career. They like a specific area of finance that they want to work in, or investments. And so all of these things just give us more options to choose from, which is why it's really important to think through what do you want? What are you looking for? What are the table stakes, so to speak, here, so that you can kind of sift through things more quickly and just put your focuses in areas that make sense for you.
Great. Any other questions? There we go.
Question. So I mean, each of you can talk a little bit more about this, but how would you do CFA level 1, like master? Do you put them on the same level, or
Sure, I'll take that one. Again, I think I have utmost respect for both designations, so it's not one versus the other. That's going to be, for me personally, more role specific, what the nuances of the role are, requiring or catering to. I mean, in a perfect world, the candidate would have both, but no, I have respect for both. I think there's value for both, and it'll just depend on, what the role specifically needs that would push one way or another. But I wouldn't discount one versus the other.
Yeah, 100% role specific.
Yeah.
So for example, I have a senior tax accountant position right now, where I'd prefer a master's in a CPA. And then my investments team, my Devani, she's my CIO, Devani Shaw, she's like all day long, CFAs. But if you are on the path, right, and you have your MBA, you're on the path. Or to just have someone take you there as well too. So respect for both. You've put yourself through a lot of education and training to get to where you're at. So important.
Especially in this job market that we're hearing, I think just about anything would probably be a good step in the right direction, right?
Yeah, put yourself out there.
And set yourself apart a little bit, obviously there's going to be candidates on both sides there, and if you can put them both together, it seems like a win.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question from one of our virtual attendees, specifically for Jen. And if you, your firm is the most respected destination for technology specialists. How can we best reach out to you and explore opportunities with you?
Well, thank you for that question and that lovely compliment. I would probably need a little bit more color. I mean, I will say we have 27 open positions right now, and they're all on LinkedIn and our website. So that's probably the first way. You can link into me. I'll be on the lookout for some special email. But those are probably the primary ways to reach out at this point. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sure, so I have a comment and a question. Question's a little long, so bear with me. Regarding the earlier question about stopping at CFA level 1, I think my perspective there, and I work with a lot of FAU students in the MSF program and the CFA program as well. I think for me, if somebody were coming to my firm and said, oh, I'm just going to stop at CFA level 1, I think I would be a little troubled, particularly since I come from the world of alpha generation, right? And if you're going to continuously try and do that, where things are continuously changing, you have to be continuously learning. So in some sense, there is a signaling effect from the candidate, right? Where, okay, you're just going to start at level 1, and that could be okay. I think it could be perfectly fine, but at the same time, you need to be continuously learning. And I think the CFA program does help with that. So that was my comment. This is my question for the panelists. What kind of demand is there for finance professionals with varying degrees of programming experience? I actually get this question a lot from students that I work with. And how great is the demand for what I have termed a bridge professional between the data and tech side and the finance side? As we've found out, particularly in investment research, oftentimes you can't just throw a computer at the problem. You do need some finance theory. And I've also heard stories where you have the tech team, the machine learning team, and then they have conversations, they have meetings with executives, and it goes nowhere, right? Because there's nobody understands each other. And I've tried to think about this. I've had conversations with some of the people at FAU, and like, how do we integrate, say, Python skills into the program to where they get enough skills where they can actually use them. But how important do you think that is, sort of that middle role? Because if you're getting somebody that's like a CFA, okay, they might not be a computer scientist, but they can communicate with the CS people, but they also know a lot about finance.
So I can say a little bit about this because I did some consulting work when I was in Charlotte, and one of my engagements was I worked with Bright House Financial when they spun off of MetLife. And I was hired to help stand up the investments platform. And we were engaging with a solution, like a holistic solution with BlackRock's Aladdin, but it still involved like third-party vendors, and there were a lot of decisions to make. And one of the reasons that they were interested in me is because I'd worked with the system before. I had the background in portfolio management. And so I also had some experience working with some people on the technology side. So very often in those situations, especially when you're doing technological implementations and in banking and systems and all that, you sort of need somebody that can bridge the gap, right? Because I did in that role, I worked directly for one of the executives of the company. I also worked with architecture, to put together, because there's one thing, you can think about, you can go to different areas of the business and say, okay, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Right? So you're gathering that information, but then you have to really think about logistically, how is this going to work? So I think there's definitely, I didn't have the programming background per se, but I think there's got to be today, especially with all these programs that are doing different things like a technology, fintech, I think there's got to be some really nice opportunities in that if you enjoy both areas.
I mean, I'll jump on that as well. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of skill set and skill set of the future. Like I said, our fastest growing group is analytics and technology, but the ability to do that work and understand, in our case, the investment management landscape, the terminology, how we present data, what's useful to our sales team, to our marketing team, to our investment team. When we post our positions, there's usually a primary focus. So if it's analytics, the first request is, must know Tableau, Python, whatever. And then the second line usually is, advanced investment management knowledge preferred. So we're not going to make it a requirement because we don't want to knock the bucket, we don't want to knock candidates out. But to the extent that someone walks in my door or through my Zoom, and has that skill set is incredibly impressive and would move them to the top of the list. So, I mean, if you're thinking about future state creation of classes, I think that's a magical combination, even if it's just foundation skills. And, they don't need to be doing advanced Python or advanced Tableau, whatever the, coding language is, but an understanding and ability to communicate is hugely going to be helpful now and in the future.
I think that's kind of one of the challenges. I talked about throwing it into the boot camp. I think from my experience, to be proficient, I mean, coding is a skill.
Right.
I mean, it's to varying degrees, right? I guess the question would be like, how much would you expect maybe from somebody like that? And I guess from my perspective, trying to potentially build a course for that.
Right. I don't have a specific answer for, the right level. There's got to be a balancing act. But I think in terms of knowledge and skill set, that is definitely where, the future is moving. FinTech aside, any industry, data is everything, and how you present your data internally, externally, it's extremely important.
I think the FinTech space is extremely important and everything evolves. And as we walk down that road, I think everyone needs to keep that in the back of their mind and make sure they have a well-rounded background and bring that into the picture, right? Because I don't think we're going backwards there.
Yeah.
So that's something that's going to keep moving forward. And if you're not, I think you're going to end up getting left behind if you're not bringing that into your thought process. Great question, Mike. Thank you. Any other questions? I want to take a few minutes to let our panelists maybe touch on topics that we didn't get to yet. If anything that comes top of mind, I'll give each of you an opportunity. And we went this way to begin. I want to start down with Jan. Anything that you'd like to touch on for speaking to charter holders in the area that may be listening online, and what you would pass along as far any advice and thoughts on the market?
Well, I guess I'll do a plug for you. Attend these events. It's I think shared misery builds camaraderie. And it's a great way to make friends. And I know we're all busy and, life happens fast, but I think coming down here and grabbing a drink with someone else that you speak the same language with, and, maybe it's applying it in a different way, just for your own curiosity. And they have great speakers here as well. So the one thing I would hit on is if you're watching it from Zoom, don't be scared to come out and attend. It's really fun being here and meeting everyone, all these tremendous individuals.
Yeah. For the society. There you go.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially coming off of the pandemic, it's like, I love the fact that there's so much flexibility now to attend things that you couldn't possibly attend in person. But I think that doesn't mean, in my mind, that you would skip out on opportunities within your area, opportunities to connect with different people. I think all of that is hugely important. It keeps us connected. And it also enhances like learning opportunities and things over time. So I would say, I would encourage you, even though we've all gotten used to probably being at home way too much, I think, it's good to kind of force ourselves to start getting back out again.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go with one of my core company values, which is growth mindset. I think continuing, it was echoed throughout the panel tonight, continuing to have a growth mindset, being open to new opportunities, learning, advancing your knowledge, whether that's a coding class or the ESG certification or anything like that. And coupled with that, kind of bringing someone along with you. So, we want to, I'm focused heavily also on diversity and inclusion. So we want to, market the CFA to younger college grads, to bring a colleague who may be considering something like that. If you have new interns coming in, mention the CFA program, you can kind of bring people along into the folds and help educate them on why it's a great opportunity.
Kate?
Well, I think that kind of the topic is just show up, right? Show up, get yourself out there, outside your comfort zone. I know there's a lot of, I can speak on the rising leaders or young professionals. I'm in young professionals at JM Family, and a lot of college students, right, going through COVID, so used to the virtual life. Get yourself out there, build those soft skills that we learned when we were young and going to school and, getting yourself out there. So I think that's the most important is show up in this digital age because you can get lost in it for sure. And this is a great way to segue into a brand new cool year that we have ahead of us. So.
And how can people get in touch with you? We mentioned LinkedIn. Katie is saying.
Yep. LinkedIn.
Okay, so anyone
Always
out there
open.
that wants to connect, that might and network and start the process, right?
Absolutely, start building. Yeah.
There we go. And again, to all of you, the CFA Society South Florida, as Jan mentioned, is a great networking spot to get out, meet all the locals. We're up to roughly 500 members. So you never know who you're going to meet at one of our events. We have socials, we have educational events, we have all types of panels such as this one. And I think it's a big value add for you to get out and meet some of these individuals. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Polen Capital and FAU for hosting us in this pretty cool setup. And thank you very much.